Ho, ho, ho! Is this thing on? Mic check. One sleigh, two sleigh. That's right. I've got a podcast now. Stories, jokes, and some serious North Pole nonsense. Santa Has a Podcast is out now at santahasapodcast.com. Ho, ho, ho!
Support American jobs while standing up for your values. OldGloryDepot.com brings you conservative pride on premium, made-in-USA gear. Don't settle. Wear your patriotism proudly. Visit OldGloryDepot.com today.
I say this every election cycle, and I'll say it again. The 2024 political field was intense, so don't get left behind in 2025. If you're running for office, the first thing on your to-do list should be securing your name on the web. With a yourname.vote domain from GoDaddy.com, you'll stand out and make your mark. Don't wait. Get yours today.
Welcome to another episode of Breaking Battlegrounds with your host, Chuck Warren. I'm Sam Stone. Jumping into it, as always, our first guest today, Alessandra Hay, journalist and writer known for her reporting and commentary on Ukraine, geopolitics, and the ongoing war following Russia's 2022 invasion. She is in Kyiv right now and speaking to us from there. She's got an amazing piece out that caught our attention. Amazing and sad, Chuck. In counteroffensive news, no place to rest Ukraine's dead. They're running out of spaces in their cemeteries. Really kind of brings home the humanity of what's going on over there. Alessandra Hay, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
Before we get into your article, what is the world news? What are journalists missing about Ukraine right now? What are they not understanding?
I think maybe one thing that is maybe being missed in the news that maybe I hear a lot of in Ukraine is that I think that when these big kind of stories come out about peace talks and stuff, the whole world starts going, okay, is the war in Ukraine going to end, blah, 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 and they start talking about it. And I think that what's really interesting is in Ukraine, that doesn't really happen. When these stories come out, people kind of aren't affected by them because I think that from the Ukrainian perspective, what we're seeing here is that Russia really has no intention of ending this war, and that really the only way to keep going, to protect Europe, to protect Ukraine, is really to, fight to the very end.
Yeah.
I think that it just really, I think for Ukrainians, they really seem unaffected by these stories about peace talks. I think is really
that's interesting. We had Thomas Grove on. He's a reporter from the Wall Street Journal, lives in Poland now, but lived in Russia for years, has been banned in there. So he's been covering the war. And we asked him a question 3 years ago. We said, how does this end? And he said, someone has to win. Do the Ukrainians feel that? Like, there's no peace. We have to just win. Is that where they're at?
I think that, there's always the question of what does it mean to win and what does it mean to lose, right?
Correct.
Right. I think it seems kind of improbable that, how far will Russia really get? And, there's always some negotiation. That's always how a war ends. But I think that Ukrainians just feel incredibly disillusioned with the idea of diplomacy. And I think that this idea that you can kind of negotiate and bargain with Russia really does not kind of hit people here in Ukraine. It's really not an idea that people believe in, I think.
How have people resigned themselves to what then would appear to be a very long war, continuing this very long war still in front of them?
How have people resigned themselves to
or how are they facing it, I guess? Because, it seems like there's no end in sight. It appears to be a high-tech stalemate, a very bloody one.
Mm-hmm.
So where do they see the end of this, I guess?
Yeah, I think that although it has been such a long time already and the end isn't in sight, I think that what has happened in the last 4 years has been there have been so many different chapters to the war. And I think that the reality is that, something could happen that would totally change the course of the war and change the situation. So I think that people don't see the war as kind of this never-ending thing. I think people are just really waiting to see what happens next. Because, I mean, look, it's like the 9th of January, and look at how much has happened this year in the world already. Like, it's, you know, anything could happen, really. I think
Right.
that's kind of the only answer, really. I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah.
Alessandra, tell us, folks, what is life like in Kyiv? What is life like in Kyiv today?
Well, today, I'm probably one of the only people in Kiev with electricity, so it's good you chose me to call. 'Cause yeah, there was a huge attack last night, and most people don't have electricity. I didn't have water this morning, but it came back. But it's very cold. It's very dark. There's snow. Yeah, it's not good. But people are, trying to keep the morale high, but it is difficult in the winter.
I got to ask a bit of a tough question because this is just my impression from looking from the outside, but it seems like realistically Europe and the United States are perfectly fine to leave Ukraine in a perpetual war to just continually wear down and drain Russian resources. Is there frustration with that? Like, it's kind of one of those do it or get off the pot moments at some point for Western support, right? Like either really support Ukraine or what are you doing?
I think definitely that's something I hear a lot of. A lot of people say like, they're kind of just giving them enough to keep fighting, but not giving them enough to win. And that's obviously incredibly painful because, what that's doing is it really is like real people are dying and that's a real human loss. And I think that, I mean, you never know what's going to happen. And also, you talk about the US, but again, who the US is changes every 4 years. So you don't know what's going to happen in a few years, I guess. But I think, from my perspective, I think really, I mean, I wish the US would support Ukraine more. But I also think that Europe is really stepping up. I think that one thing that maybe is becoming a bigger story is Russia's attacks, kind of sabotage attacks in Europe. And I think that that is making people anxious. And I think that we've kind of seen Europe's kind of rearmament period. But I think the truth is that Europe needs Ukraine because Europe doesn't want to, be confronted with Russia. And the truth is Russia has like really done some pretty scary things last year, I guess now, with, flying drones into Poland, intimidating the Baltics. Like that's real stuff. It's scary. So I think that, I mean, what can Russia really do? Like, what I mean to say is that Russia, I think, poses a real threat to Europe. And Europe can't really just leave Ukraine to fight this battle on its own because in the end, it will end up being Russia's neighbor, and we see what happens to Russia's neighbors. It's not a good thing.
Let me ask you this question. So polling in America shows that still a majority of Americans want Ukraine to win. I mean, I think there's a mistake by the world press that America doesn't want Ukraine to win. It's just there's no numbers that show that. But we don't want to put boots on the ground. Does that make sense? So my question for you is this, as you've talked to your friends and sources, what would you like the United States to do in this? Without boots on the ground. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I guess put more pressure on Russia. And I would just love to see Trump really stand up to Putin. I think that would just be so powerful for the rest of the world.
And what does that look? What is that? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to ask you this.
Yeah.
What does that look like? What does standing up to you look like? Because I'm all for it. I hate Russia. So what is it? What does it?
Chuck has spent his 5 years on this program wishing death on pretty much
Russia,
all of Russia. So
what does that look like? Standing up to Putin.
I mean, I guess sanctioning and kind of in the negotiations, like I just think a lot of what he's done has been so friendly to Putin, like inviting Putin to come and speak in the U.S., to kind of talk to him in the U.S., just his kind of kind words to Putin, going to talk in Moscow.
Right.
I think just really having a stronger stance on it and being like, I feel like America has a lot of the cards in this talk. That is kind of what we're seeing, right? So why are we giving them away for free to this, like, to Putin. That's kind of how I feel, at least watching it.
Well, and it would be an interesting time for him to do that, given what just happened in Venezuela, where U.S. military forces they went through Venezuela's air defense system, which was Russian and Chinese, like it wasn't even there.
Well, and it's also, and we're going to get to your story now, but the reality is, too, with the oil situation there, oil is probably going to drop to about $55 a barrel, which is going to bankrupt Russia. So I'm trying to figure out where they're going to get the money to
Fingers crossed.
He's sort of doing how Reagan bankrupted them type deal. So let's talk about your article on the cremation. There's just no more room for burials. Tell us about it, because the one thing Sam and I have discussed a lot on the show that just makes us sick to our stomach is because of Russia's evil aggression. They're wiping out a generation of men on both sides. I mean, it's just appalling. It's evil. So tell us about this new problem that people don't think about, that there's not enough room for burial, so now we had to do cremation.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, I mean, I think you explained it really well, but there's a serious shortage of plots in cemeteries, and it's become so serious that, a lot of the cemeteries are kind of spilling over, and people are burying outside of the cemeteries, which is like a really serious,
health
sanitation
risk,
problem, because it's contaminating the water supply, and so there's that issue. It also means they're getting more expensive. People can't afford them. Obviously, more people are dying in Ukraine. So a lot of people are turning to cremations. So they're just in the final stage of building a crematorium in Lviv. So this was actually a problem before the full-scale invasion. It was actually after COVID that the problem got really bad. Well, that started to get bad. And they had all these crematoriums planned, but a lot of them were in territory that is now occupied or on the front line. So only one of them actually has been able to continue being built, and that's the one in Lviv. But it's a really serious problem. They've had to exhume bodies from the Second World War, and it's it's kind of actually affected the whole of the country.
Oh my gosh.
Gosh, that is awful. We have just 2 minutes left here, Alessandra. How are families, dealing with that? I think, is cremation not been historically something that has been embraced in Ukraine? It seems like it's something that has sort of some religious barriers to it at times.
Yeah, it is interesting. I'm not 100% sure why, because Ukraine with this new one will have 3 crematoriums, which is really a low number for how big Ukraine is. For example, the United Kingdom, which is obviously a fraction of the size of Ukraine, has, I think, 150 or something like that. So it's really small. I don't know why historically it's been like that. It's not part of the Catholic Christian tradition. But then again, I don't know. I mean, Poland's way more religious than Ukraine. So I don't know why they haven't. But I think the attitude is changing. I think out of necessity, people just really, are having to rely on cremation. So they're kind of being forced to change their views.
Chuck, in case you're the last one left when I go, just, burn me up and dump me on the side of a mountain somewhere.
I've already have the note to do that. Alessandra, how do people follow you and your writing? We have truly enjoyed this interview, and we hope you want to come back on the show again and keep us up to date on what you're writing and what you're doing.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I've enjoyed talking to you guys. I'm on Substack. It's Alessandra Hay. I write for The Counteroffensive a lot. And I'm on Twitter as well. It's also Alessandra Hay.
Alessandra Hay, thank you so much for joining us. We love having you on the program. Really appreciate you taking the time, and we're glad you had the electricity to do it, and hopefully everyone else there will soon have theirs back on. Breaking Battlegrounds will be coming back with more here in just one moment.
All right, imagine this. You're running for president. Yes, president. What's the first thing you need? Well, besides the $1 million fundraising, you need to secure your web domain. You need your name, .vote. Easy to remember, straight to the point, and a direct link to your campaign. No, but seriously, whether you're getting out to vote or convincing people that yes, you can fix the potholes on Main Street, a .vote domain helps you stand out. It's not just a website, it's a call to action. Head over to GoDaddy.com or name.com, type in your name, .vote, and boom, you're ready to make a lasting impact. Get started today with your .vote web address.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. Our next guest up today, Josh Cook, was appointed by President Trump to serve as regional administrator for the EPA's Pacific Southwest region, overseeing the implementation and enforcement of federal environmental laws across Arizona, California, Nevada, Hawaii, the Pacific Islands, and 148 tribal nations. Josh previously had appointments at the U.S. Department of Interior, Bureau of Land Management, Northern California Resource Advisory Council, and vice chair appointed by, which he was vice chair of, appointed by Secretary of the Interior Barnhart. So, Josh, welcome to the program.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. It's a great story to tell, and you've got a big audience that I guess likes to hear about wins. So
let's talk about a win. So, U.S. and Mexico signed a new agreement on the Tijuana River sewage crisis, something that amazes me that the environmentalists in the Obama or Biden administration did not solve. And I have a non-political business where my chief of staff is, we'll call her moderate. And I said, how bad, she was in Coronado for July 4th last year. I go, how bad was it? She goes, oh, you can smell it. People wouldn't get in the water. So tell people what this story is, because it has not got played, because, of course, why would you give Trump the success for this? But tell people what was the crisis and how was it solved?
So it's interesting, as Gavin Newsom drives more and more Californians out of his state, Tijuana is growing at a rate of more than like 10% a year.
Wow.
And as they go, they don't keep up with their infrastructure. And historically, they've just had this system there where the sewer just runs into the river. And then the river runs across the border into the United States, through the Tijuana River, through the marsh, and out into the ocean. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And the Biden administration did nothing. And the sewer plant, there's a joint international sewer plant that's supposed to catch part of it and clean it up. But the reality is the Mexicans were supposed to fix on their side, according to a U.S.-Mexico international agreement they signed 20, 30 years ago. They were supposed to be fixing this, and they weren't. And so, I take the job at the EPA, get a call from, the headquarters. They're like, hey, the president's upset about this, the Mexicans putting their, fecal, let's just, I don't know a better way to say this, Chuck, but let's just call it raw sewage, into the river, and it closes all the beaches in San Diego. So you have the Coronado Hotel, this iconic hotel, millions of dollars of tourism, shut down. You have the Navy SEALs who specifically built their barracks on the beach, because part of what they do is run out into the ocean and start swimming. And that was impacted. They couldn't do their training because on certain days there was so much fecal contamination. They had to shut down schools in the area on days when, and it wasn't just sewage. They would find gangs that would come from Mexico to San Diego and take your toxic waste and drive it across the border and then just dump it in the river with all the sewage. And this was going on and on to the point where it was closing the beaches, impacting our military readiness. And, President Trump, he got a bee in his bonnet. And so he calls up Lee Zeldin and he says, hey, these people are running their fecal matter into our country and I want it solved. That was the situation in Coronado as of a year and a half ago. That's what it was. That was the problem. That was what was happening. And it was just happening.
And what did it take to solve it?
Well, it's pretty interesting because the President Trump finally just called the president of Mexico on the phone. Well, she's an environmentalist, and she's has a background, oddly enough, in water and water law. And he's like, hey, you're running into my country. And she's like, you're just trying to embarrass me. And so she sent her Secretary of Environment, and the president sent Lee Zeldin down to San Diego, and they just sat down, and Zeldin walked into the room with, we will fix this. You're going to do what you need to do. We're going to do what we need to do. The money was already appropriated. There was $300 or $400 million of Biden money here. The Mexicans had built a brand new 10 million gallon a day sewer plant on their side. It's not enough. It doesn't keep their commitment fully, but they had done something. But what happened and what this is reflective of is when President Trump says, I want this fixed, it's really it's really amazing how the bureaucracy responds. They just act like that didn't really mean anything. And in my position, I'm like, no, really, you ever see the show The Apprentice? He fires people and he wants this fixed, and the money's already there. So if the money's already there, this is simply a matter of leadership. And so I went down with the Border Patrol, took a tour, got to learn a little bit about it. We brought in the best people, and when there were two government contractors that had contracts to fix some of this infrastructure, and they just hadn't been doing it. The money was there. And so they went back and Zeldin finally went to Mexico, and they pulled out this decades old agreement that created the International Boundary and Water Commission, this little thing in the government that's supposed to stop this from happening. And they started to spend the money on the projects that needed to be spent immediately to start fixing it. And literally, Lee Zeldin just goes in there and says, we're going to do something significant within 100 days. And literally, people just laughed him out of the room, the bureaucracy, the status quo. And so we moved forward. We worked with the state of Tijuana or the state of Baja and the state of California, and we started a process. And within 100 days, they were taking an additional 10,000 gallons of sewage out of the river and stopping it from getting to the beaches.
We're with Josh Cook. Josh, two questions. How long had this been happening? And two, why didn't the Biden administration fix the problem?
So this had been going on for more than 20 years. They've had beach closures. Actually, it goes back further. San Diego the population of San Diego wasn't what it was 30 years ago. But for the last 20 years, this closes down the beaches. This makes a horrible stench. Chuck, I was there talking to Border Patrol agents who had run into the Tijuana River to grab someone, and the bottoms of their boots melted. With a chemical reaction. There was a cloud of arsenic that formed at a junction of the river where it went over a little waterfall, and it made a cloud of arsenic gas next to a school. This was a serious thing. Now here's what you find out when you go to clean up these Biden messes. Under the Joe Biden administration, nothing was ever wrong at the border, Chuck. It wasn't allowed.
Right.
Okay. There was no human trafficking. Okay. There was no toxic pollution. There was no military issues with the military and our military swimming in this. And what's really amazing, when we finally sat down and Zeldin got in the room with Democrat and Republican members of Congress, like the congressional delegation from San Diego, there's no partisanship here. The one congressman he's like, my family member was in the Navy and swam in this and has cancer in every part of his body. Are you telling me there's not a problem here? And the Navy was at the time just under orders. Hey, you don't talk about it. Border Patrol. Hey, you don't talk about it. And it just amazes me. And it made my job easy, honestly. I mean, because here's the deal. They look at you're the Trump guy. You're here to wreck the environment. You're here to, you're going to go club baby seals, in the morning, and then you're going to go out and, run, you're going to, urinate in people's water. And then you're going to, put lead back in gasoline. That's the garbage, people say about where we were going. We're not.
Josh, I would like to bring back acid rain from the 80s. That's my Trump goal, right? Folks, we're going to stay tuned because we're going to have more from Josh coming up on our podcast segment. Make sure you're part of that. Breaking Battlegrounds coming back in just a moment.
Old Glory Depot isn't just a website. It's a movement. Featuring unapologetically conservative shirts and gear, we're proud to deliver 100% American-made products. From premium materials to bold designs, every purchase supports American jobs and celebrates our country. Show your pride, support your values, and shop oldglorydepot.com because patriotism never goes out of style.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. Our next guest up today, Joe Pollack, is an opinion editor, or the opinion editor, at the California Post, a brand new 7 days a week digital and print newspaper in California, launching January 26th. Sister to the New York Post. Chuck and I, when we saw this, we were both pretty excited about this, Joel. This is a pretty exciting new development in California media.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and people are thrilled about it. Everyone I talk to about California Post is very excited to have a new alternative voice in California to provide a right-of-center perspective on events in the state. And it's just so badly needed in California, where one perspective tends to dominate our news coverage, as well as entertainment and everything else that goes on in the tech world. Tech has moved a little bit away from the far left, as we know, over the last several months, I guess, or since the 2024 election. But California is still dominated by left-wing media, and so people are very excited that there's going to be an alternative in the California Post.
Is there any daily in California that speaks from a center-right or right-of-center perspective?
Yeah, to some extent. You've got a couple of papers. You've got the Orange County Register, the LA Daily News. These are smaller papers, and they tend to be focused on Southern California. What we want to do is hold up a mirror to the state as a whole, because there's no layer of state coverage that reflects anything other than the far left perspective,
Correct.
Or at best a kind of center left perspective. There are some good outlets. Cal Matters is one of them. It's a nonprofit that does some good commentary, but there really is no statewide alternative. And what happens because of that is that Gavin Newsom doesn't have to respond to any form of accountability on the state level. When he wants to talk about politics to residents of California, it's always national politics. He nationalizes everything. He never has to account for his job on the state level to taxpayers in the state. And he is able to get away with that because there's no state media outlet. And it's either hyper-local coverage or national coverage. And so, for example, he's able to spend $300 million on Proposition 50 to gerrymander congressional districts and doesn't have to explain to the state, which is running massive deficits, why he's doing it. And he doesn't have to explain to the state why he's taking away the votes of millions of Californians, essentially. But he just puts it in national terms and says, well, we got to do something about Texas. Well, that's not why we elected governor.
Exactly.
We don't elect the governor to do something about Texas. We elect the governor to do something about California.
Folks, with Josh Pollack, and he is now the opinion editor for the California Post. We highly recommend that you go to californiapost.com, and there you're able to sign up. And when the paper gets launched, you'll get an email and various opinion pieces and so forth. And if you like the New York Post, you're going to love the California Post. Let me ask you a question about your opinion page. Will you take national stories for the opinion page, or will you try to go focus a lot on California in your opinion pages?
It's going to be a mix. I think the national stories that we include will be stories that are relevant to California. So, for example, there are some national and even international stories that Californians have a close interest in. We have a huge population of immigrants from Iran, for example, who are following what's happening in Iran very closely. And so that becomes relevant. But we also have issues that are hyper-local but still of interest to readers generally in California. For example, I'm watching a story right now this week about new parking meters in Balboa Park in San Diego. Now, you might not think that matters to anybody, but it actually does, because a lot of cities, a lot of municipalities have started to use automated parking meters. Sometimes they're run by outside contractors, sometimes even by international firms. And there have been some cities, not necessarily in California, but the city of Chicago famously lost a lot of money on its parking meter contract. So sometimes these local disputes are also going to get a lot of coverage because they're relevant to the rest of the people in California. But it's going to be a mix. We want to focus on California. Our primary goal is to create a voice about what's going on in California. But that means people are going to connect on every level: national, foreign, and local.
You bring up that city of Chicago thing. I think I saw that, if I remember right, they were paid something like $9 billion for 30 years control of their parking meters, and that company, like 8 years later, has made $30 billion on it. Yeah. I mean, they were desperate for cash, and they just put themselves in a dreadful position. Joel, when we come back, we wanted to talk a little bit about the piece you had on Newsom disqualifies himself from the presidency, in his own words, and then obviously, because you've been on the show before and discussed the Palisades fire, we want to focus a little bit on that as well. Folks can follow Joel on X at Joel Pollack, and obviously very soon to come here on January 26th at the California Post. And if you're not, folks, be sure you're going to breakingbattlegrounds.vote. Sign up for our podcast segment. Sign up for all the extra content you're going to get from our Substack, all of our feeds. There's a ton of great material on there every single day. Chuck spends an inordinate amount of time making sure everyone has plenty of great entertainment. So make sure, breakingbattlegrounds.vote. We will be back here in just one moment.
Sam and I are always talking about being prepared, whether it's hurricanes in Florida, earthquakes in California, flooding in Arizona, or supply chain disruptions.
Exactly, Chuck. When pharmacies shut down, it does not matter how tough you are, you still need access to critical medicine.
That's why we trust Jace Medical. The Jace case comes with 5 life-saving antibiotics and key over-the-counter meds, so you're covered when things get disrupted.
And Jace goes beyond just the Jace case. They also offer first aid kits, daily prescriptions, and long-term nutrition with Jace Pantry. Don't wait for the next hurricane warning or natural disaster. Take control of your health and peace of mind today.
Visit jace.com and use code FUTURE at checkout for $10 off your order. That's FUTURE at JASE.com.
In today's digital world, standing out is more important than ever. Whether you're running for office, leading a cause, or hosting a vote for the cutest pet in town, you need a web domain that's simple, memorable, and action-oriented. You need a .vote web domain. It's clear, impactful, and establishes a lasting presence for your campaign. Don't wait. Head to GoDaddy.com or Name.com, type in your name.vote, and get started today. Because after all, every pet deserves a web address that's as special as they are.
All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds with Chuck Warren. I'm Sam Stone. We're continuing on now with our guest, Joel Pollack, opinion editor at the California Post. Follow him on X at Joel Pollack, or very soon at thecaliforniapost.com, where you can go right now and get signed up. New sister paper to the New York Post, and a very exciting development. But recently, Joel, you had a piece in the New York Post. Newsom disqualifies himself from the presidency in his own words. I thought you really hit that on the head. Going through that article, it's like everything Newsom complains about Trump doing, it's pretty much the same stuff he's doing.
Well, what Newsom said in response to an interview was that he wanted the next presidential candidate to be what he called a repairer of the breach, citing the Bible. And that's a really admirable notion, but Newsom has done anything but. And in fact, in the last several months, Newsom has positioned himself as the troll in chief, and he turned his taxpayer-funded press office account into a constant troll account that makes fun of the president, and not just in cute little ways, but actually in quite obscene ways, sexual jokes, profanity. Now, they say that they're just responding to Trump measure for measure, but Trump is more effective, first of all, and secondly, a little more sparing. He's not just generally going to go out there and drop F-bombs the way Eric Swalwell does and the way Newsom and his troll accounts have started to do. It's really just a form of abuse of public taxpayer funds. And more than that, it just reinforces divisions. I mean, Newsom says that if the next presidential candidate wants to be effective, they have to be repairers of the breach. Well, he's not a repairer of the breach. He's widening the breach. And he's doing it so that he can position himself as the most anti-Trump candidate in the Democratic field heading into 2028. Someone has to remind these people, Trump's not going to be on the ballot in 2028. Newsom actually pretends Trump's going to run for another term, but Trump's not going to be on the ballot, and they're making it all about Trump, but that's where the Democrats are right now. They're just obsessed with him. So Newsom is positioning himself, maybe cleverly, in this political way by saying, hey, I'm the most outrageous guy against Trump. But that's not repairing the breach. I mean, if Newsom says we need a president who's going to bring people together, well, he just disqualified himself.
We often fact check Gavin Newsom's tweets on our social media. He's like the easiest person in the world to fact check because he never puts anything out that's truthful. Did he really do a fundraising campaign on selling knee pads?
Yes, he sells knee pads. Now, it's open to interpretation what the knee pads are for.
Sure.
I mean, I guess you could say they're just for kneeling, I don't know, in prayer or submission or something like that. But we all know that what Newsom really means by selling these knee pads is sexual connotation. So he's basically saying that if you work with President Trump, you are, in a sense, performing a sex act on President Trump, and therefore you need to buy knee pads. and he's selling them on his website. And when he was confronted by it, by, of all people, the New York Times, his excuse was, well, I am raising money. In other words, it has been effective in raising funds for my campaign. Therefore, that makes it right or excusable.
Yeah, says every prostitute on a street corner.
Well, but that's the Democrat mantra right now.
Well, yeah, so
the ends justify the means.
That brings me to the next question. Have you met anybody since 2024 that has decided to become a Democrat because they're using the F word more? This seems to be the whole new messaging for Democrats. We're going to play tough and just use the F-bomb whenever we can, whatever, written communication, verbal. I mean, it's really stepped up. It's noticeable.
Yeah, I think they got some kind of memo that says you need to show that you're real or authentic or tough by swearing all the time. And they also think that Trump gets away with it, so we can get away with it too. But what they don't realize is, first of all, when Trump attacks somebody or he uses an off-color insult, he almost never attacks someone who hadn't attacked him first. He doesn't go after small people unless they have entered the political fray. He attacks politicians, journalists, celebrities, but again, they have to oppose him first. He doesn't pick fights.
He's a counterpuncher. Yeah.
He's a counterpuncher. Well, he's more like the counter-nuclear bomber. I mean, like you punch him, like, destroys your house. But he is not just going out there to abuse people. I just think that it's a form of posturing that doesn't work. As we were talking about this, my mind went back to the movie Gran Torino. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Gran Torino, but there's a scene where Clint Eastwood, who is trying to mentor this young immigrant kid about how to be a man in America.
Right.
Clint Eastwood walks into a barber shop and he banters around with the barber, and they use a little profanity and some sexual references and that kind of thing. And Clint Eastwood tells the kid, all right, now you try it. And the kid comes in and just swears at the barber. And the barber takes out a shotgun and cocks it and says, get out of here before I blow your head off. And Clint Eastwood explains to him, there's a difference between talking to someone and just using swear words and swearing at someone. I mean, and what is the key difference? When you use foul language in a conversation with someone who you're friends with, you never use it at the friend. You use it to talk about other people, third parties, people who aren't there. And what Democrats don't do that. They're just throwing abuse at Trump all the time, at Republicans, at other Americans. I don't think it impresses anybody any more than the kid in Gran Torino impressed the barber.
That is a great reference, and it's just like they forgot how to talk to people. I want to go to the mayor of New York, Madani. He, in his inaugural speech, and I say this because you're from South Africa originally, so I'm going to ask you may not have an opinion on it, saying they want to set example for the world and adopt the South African model of governance. What is he talking about?
Well, this is really interesting. So the American left for 30 years has admired the South African Constitution. In fact, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the late Supreme Court Justice, was asked during the Egyptian Revolution in the Arab Spring what advice she would give to Egyptians if they were going to write a new democratic constitution for their country. And she infamously said, don't look to the American Constitution, you should follow the South African Constitution. Now, people were shocked by that because, of course, she's sworn to uphold the American Constitution. Right. But what the left likes about the South African Constitution is that it includes socioeconomic rights. Under the South African Constitution, you have freedom of speech, you have freedom of religion, but you also have the right to health care. You have the right to education. You even have the right to a clean environment. You have all these socioeconomic rights. And that's what Democrats want to do in this country. They say that everything that government should be providing for people is actually a right. And they want to use that concept of a right to hold the government accountable and force the government to provide things. But they never look at the results of this experiment in South Africa. And it turns out that when you make these socioeconomic goals into rights, then two things happen. First of all, you start infringing upon the primary rights, the civil rights, freedom of speech and freedom of religion. We saw that with Obamacare when Obama went after Little Sisters of the Poor because they said, well, you can't have your freedom of religion when it comes to abortion and contraceptives because we have to give healthcare as a right to everybody. So that means we have to give contraceptive pills and abortion drugs to everybody. And so there's an infringement on the primary freedoms. And the other thing that happens is you actually don't get the health care. You don't get the clean environment. And in South Africa, they try to smooth things over by saying, well, these rights, these socioeconomic rights, we can't provide them right away, but we're going to have them be progressively realized over time. That's the phrase. But that doesn't deter the American left from saying, hey, you know what, we need to have socioeconomic rights in our Constitution. They don't look at the fact that when you have health care as a right, then you don't actually have health care, because the government says, well, we gave you the right to health care, so we are great. We don't have to do anything more than that. I would just add one other thing. The father of critical race theory, which is a topic that many in the conservative media discussed over the last several years, it's the theory behind DEI and so many of these other things. The father of critical race theory was a guy named Derek Bell. And Derek Bell believed America was a white supremacist country and that the only cure for white supremacy was these South African-style socioeconomic rights. So when Mamdani says he wants to do a South African model, what he's talking about is critical race theory. What he's talking about is this woke style of governance, which does not produce any results for the people it's supposed to be helping, but just introduces this ideology that over time will ruin everything.
I always remember going to Johannesburg. I was in business there for about 5 years ago, and our convention center is about, half a mile straight shot to the Marriott where I was staying. And it was dusk one night, and I was running out to walk it, and the manager comes out and goes, Mr. Warren, you can't do that. We need to drive you. It's not safe. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I mean, it's just a mile down the road, straight shot. We're in a business district, right? But anyway, I did it. They would drive me every night. And then I got back to the U.S. and had some friends there who were part of this conference, and they were former 2 Rangers, and they said they got robbed. Walking, because they ignored the guy. I go, what'd you do? He goes, just gave him our wallet. I mean, I'm not going to get shot over a wallet, right? So, yeah, anything taking South Africa as an example is a poor way to govern. All right, let's talk about the Palisades fires. Is there any improvement, any progress there?
There is some progress, but the progress that has been made is largely being made by people on their own initiative. The government, state and local governments, have not really been helpful at all. In fact, sometimes they've been harmful. And so if you go to Pacific Palisades today, you'll see some wood frame homes going up, and you'll see some infrastructure improvements, but you'll also see a lot of burnt out lots and things that are not being rebuilt. You'll also see some ugly power lines and some bad infrastructure that's been put in. I think some of the local agencies are taking advantage of the temporary absence of a lot of the residents to do what they want to do, regardless of whether it's good or not. So it's basically a mess, and there's no leadership. Residents feel like they've been abandoned, and they feel like nobody cares about whether they can come back to their homes or not. And there's a lot of anger against Gavin Newsom, governor of the state, and against Mayor Karen Bass in LA, as well as some of the other officials like Ricardo Lara, the outgoing insurance commissioner, who has done very little to hold insurance companies accountable to their customers. And there's just a sense of having been abandoned. The only public officials with any credibility are the local city councilor. Her name is Tracy Park, the state senator, Ben Allen, who's been very good. And people basically feel that everybody else has abandoned them. People are glad that Trump came in early on, but they want to see more help from the federal government as well.
Joel, yes, let me ask you this. Is Trump being stingy with aid to California?
No. First of all, Newsom has asked for $34 billion in additional aid. And if you look at what he's asking for, a lot of it has nothing to do with the people affected by the fires. For example, in that $34 billion, he's asking for $2 billion for affordable housing, low-income housing, anywhere.
Oh,
and
geez.
it's just money that's going to be handed to developers. So it actually says in the text of his proposal that they want to give it to investors or provide loan guarantees to investors. And that's just a way of rewarding your cronies. I mean, give out $2 billion in federal aid. Why not? And
it's an unbelievable reward, Joel. I've dealt with this at the City of Phoenix a great deal. The single most profitable per venture company developer here in the City of Phoenix is the city's contracted, supposedly semi-nonprofit, low-income housing builder. That model is in every city in every state. their profit margins are triple normal development profit margins on those deals. It is such an insider scam. Joel, we have just 1 minute left. The fire chief in LA has said this Palisades fire won't happen again. Is there any reason to actually believe that they won't make these same mistakes again?
No, they're not making any of the investments they need to make to ensure that it doesn't happen again. So if you look at what went right in the fire, there were private property owners who were able to defend their property, like Rick Caruso, who ran against Karen Bass in 2022. He was able to defend his mall. And one of the things he did was he had a fleet of mobile water tankers. He had a private firefighting service, but he also had these water tankers. When the reservoir ran out of water because they had emptied it and the fire hydrants had no water in them, Karen Bass's fire department couldn't do very much. But Rick Caruso had a supply of water because he had these mobile water tankers. So you think great, let's invest in mobile water tankers so that if there's ever a dysfunction in the hydrant system again, we can move water to where we need to put it. They're not doing that. They're not making any kinds of changes like that. They're not taking a hard look, and it's because they've watered down all the after-action reports, or some of the most important ones anyway. They've admitted it. They admitted that the firefighting after-action report was edited to remove some of the bad parts. So there's a lack of accountability, a lack of truth-telling, and that's why there's a lack of progress.
Thank you so much, Joel Pollak. We always love having you on the program. Look forward to having you back here again in the future. Folks, follow him on X at Joel Pollak, and be sure to go to breakingbattlegrounds.vote. Sign up for the podcast there. We're back on the air next week.
I say this every election cycle, and I'll say it again. The 2024 political field was intense, so don't get left behind in 2025. If you're running for office, the first thing on your to-do list should be securing your name on the web. With the yourname.vote domain from GoDaddy.com, you'll stand out and make your mark. Don't wait. Get yours today.
Ho, 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 ho. What do you get when you mix cocoa, candy canes, and strong Wi-Fi signals? You get a podcast. That's right, Santa has a podcast. I'm telling stories from the North Pole, sharing elf updates, and answering your questions. And yes, spilling some holiday secrets. It's festive, it's fun, and fueled entirely by cookies. Tune in wherever you get your podcast. It's Santa has a podcast. Just press play.
All right, welcome to the podcast portion of Breaking Battlegrounds with yours, Chuck Warren. I'm Sam Stone. We're continuing on now with our discussion with Josh Cook. He is the regional administrator for the EPA's Pacific and Southwest region, appointed by President Trump, was critical in helping solve the raw sewage crisis on the U.S.-Mexican border in California. But one of the other issues, Chuck, that we've been dealing with for a long time here in our home state of Arizona are issues surrounding the Clean Air Act. And obviously, those are not getting better. Josh, I know you've been heavily involved in dealing with this as well. Arizonans have been complaining for years that we're kind of being unfairly punished by Democrat administrations for air problems that we can't control, whether it's smog from China or dust from a desert. There's not a whole lot you can do about those kind of things. What's going on there, and what is the latest update on all of the issues surrounding the Clean Air Act in Arizona?
So here's overall the issue in Arizona is what you just said is true. You're being punished for your geography. It's not your fault. But what was really amazing under the Biden administration was if there was a wildfire in California and the smoke blew over to Arizona, you could get a waiver and say, hey, we had a bad air day because of their wildfire. And then you could account for that and say, yeah, okay, so that shouldn't be held against us because we have done everything we can over here to have cleaner cars, to make less pollution from our power plants. We've done everything we can as Arizonans to have cleaner air and to mitigate our pollution, right?
Right.
But when it blows over from California, it's not your problem, so they don't count on the issue. Now, if there was a Mexican wildfire, there was a section of the law that wouldn't allow Arizona to write it off. So if there's a Mexican wildfire in Mexico and the smoke blows up from Mexico, the Biden administration literally refused to give Arizona a waiver for that. And I'm talking, both parties asked, Senator Kelly, all the Republicans, hey, administration, can you give us this waiver that you can give us under the law because we're not responsible for this Mexican wildfire? And the Biden administration wouldn't do it. Now, the real issue in Arizona is ozone attainment. And the ozone problem, especially around Maricopa, comes from the geography. And overall, the problem we have with the Clean Air Act in America is this. It's become the weapon to shut down economic growth, prosperity, the American way of life. They go and they utilize these air rules to just shut things down. Now, what blows my mind is you go to these meetings and they treat Arizona as if you're a band of criminals trying to get away with something. Now, this is a state that's reduced air pollution in the last, say, 30 years by over 80%. And I'm like, I went to Gridley High School. 80% was a B, 90% is an A.
Yeah.
And Arizona has invested millions of dollars to get cleaner air. And there comes a certain point where you can't fix desert dust and the geography of the mountains that capture things. The same thing happens in Denver, and the same thing happens in Utah on the Wasatch Front. There's 3 places where when they wrote the Clean Air Act, they didn't take into account for some places have mountain ranges that catch stuff as it blows by in the jet stream. And in Arizona's case, there's billions of dollars of economic growth on the table because until Arizona can maintain the Clean Air Act compliance, you can't build these chip manufacturers that want to come to Arizona, the data centers that want to come to Arizona, and the people who want to come to and be a part of Arizona. Arizona is one of the brightest economic spots in the world. And when we went there and met with the congressional delegation with Administrator Zeldin wants to solve it. Zeldin does not like to just undo things and have them be. Zeldin refuses to undo things that will be redone in the next administration. He tries to go through the Administrative Procedures Act. He tries to work within the law to make sure that the changes that happen are substantive and real and lasting. And in Arizona, I mean, the economic growth that will be unleashed, and it really came down to 3 air quality issues that needed to be solved by the EPA. And then you can move forward with data centers, chip manufacturers, and all those things that are lined up to come to Arizona. Amazing. It blew my mind the amount of human potential and economic growth that was going to be unleashed by getting these air quality regulations.
Now, one thing I have to ask then also as a follow-up to that on behalf of the people in about half of the state of Arizona, here in Maricopa County, we are required to purchase gasoline from California that has special additives and a slightly different refining process to reduce ozone. Would this free us from that? Because right now, half the state pays prices that are massively higher than most of the rest of the country and the other half of our state.
Sam, Chuck, you're gonna probably get a call from Prozac soon because you are bringing up topics that are going to cause people to turn to antidepressants. So the governor of Arizona and the governor of Nevada, that's a Republican and a Democrat, wrote a letter to Gavin Newsom in California saying, hey, by the way, you keep trying to shut down, not inadvertently, but
deliberately. Yeah.
So yeah, we are going to shut down gasoline production because we don't like it.
Right.
Well, Arizona and Nevada can't meet their clean air goals without this special blend of gasoline that now is only made in these refineries in California. Now, the industry is trying to get to Utah. The industry is trying to get to Las Vegas and somewhere else to make this blend of gas. But for the next, say, 5 years, California is, in essence, pushing Arizona and Nevada out of clean air compliance. And this is what really made me sick when I went to the refineries. I mean, down in Southern California, I go to a refinery. They have a giant old, from World War II era, cracking machine that makes gasoline. They're ready to spend $1 billion to retrofit, upgrade the machine to make it better, cleaner, and faster, to make more of this kind of clean fuel that's good for the environment. California law, they anticipate 7 to 10 years of CEQA compliance studies. The California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. So they literally put roadblocks using environmental law in front of people trying to make something better for the environment. And then Gavin Newsom lectures everyone about how great California is when he is literally going to cause the price of gasoline to be about $8 a gallon in California. It's that bad.
It's insane.
With our remaining time, I want to ask you a question a little more personal. So Congressman Doug LaMalfa passed away. I understand you were close to him. What would you like people to remember him for?
I think people should remember Doug for what President Trump said about Doug. Because of Doug, I still have faith in America. Doug was the most average guy who was a rice farmer, who him and I in 2000, I was chairman of the Republican Party in our county. He was the vice chairman. He was the most regular guy you would have ever met. And he just thought something was wrong with America. He thought, I can barely farm anymore. How am I going to pass my ranch on to my kids when every month it's a new regulation, a new form, a different way to tax us, and then screwing up the rice markets. And he just got sick of government, and he just ran for the state legislature. Then he ran for the next thing. And it's more than Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, because he was really super effective. He became an expert on wildfires, forestry, and the biggest issue was California water. And he was a Christian man, and he just was kind to people and unassuming. And I think people should remember him as the prototype of when America worked. He was just a good person who wanted to go make a difference. Loved his wife. He had 4 kids. And now, as you listen to how much people are the outpouring of praise for him, and he was just such a humble, he worked like a dog. I mean, people would joke that if somebody was having a birthday party in their backyard, Doug LaMouth would show up. He did more this is amazing. He did more town hall meetings when no one was doing town hall meetings last year,
right,
than every other member of Congress in California combined. He loved to go out there and have these fights. He made national news. I mean, there were 3 days of national news for the one he had in Chico, because it's just a mob. They thought they were going to kill him. And he just kept taking questions. They just kept yelling and screaming, and they drugged people out of there. But he was a man of the people, and I think America needs more regular, normal people back in government.
I think the prototype of when America worked is about one of the greatest eulogies you could ever have.
100%. Josh Cook, thank you for joining us. We'll hope you'll come on every month. We'd love to have you on, buddy.
Yeah.
No, it'd be great. Appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Josh Cook.
Thank you, Josh.
Have a great day.
Yeah.
Folks, this is Breaking Battlegrounds.
Well, we don't have a Kylie's Corner anymore because we don't have a Kylie.
We're going to come up with something different, folks. We may do fact checks or something. We're going to figure it out.
We got to figure something out, because this was a popular segment, Chuck.
We'll figure it out.
But our guests today were great. I thought all of them were brilliant. This was a really fun show. And stay tuned, because we really have been upgrading a ton of the content on the Substack. We've got some additional writers getting on there. You've really been working hard at upgrading the social media, particularly Facebook and X, if you're following that. So get on all these things, folks. Go to breakingbattlegrounds.vote. Get signed up for all the content, because if you love this program on the air, you're going to love it even more when you get all the extra stuff. We will be back next week.